welcome to the first Golf Industry Talk by Jebsen Jessen. Together with me today, I have three guests from the Golf Industry Federation, also known as AGIF. So first of all, I would like to welcome Richard Walne, Managing Director APAC, the Toro Company, as well as President of AGIF. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Henrik. Good morning, everybody.
And also together with me is David Townend, Managing Director at Azalea Hospitality and Vice President of AGIF. Good morning, David. Known as AGIF.
Good morning, Henrik. Good morning, all.
And finally, but not least, Lynge, Chief Executive Officer of AGIF. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Henrik. Good morning, all.
I think from a global point of view, the golf world has been affected just like our everyday life. I think depending on the government rules that are in place where you are, we're at different stages. So I think there's a lot to learn about things that have happened already in other parts of the world. So it's good to kind of go over where we are. One of the interesting things forums allow is industry to get together and support the various parts of golf. A good example was recently in New Zealand. When they had a shutdown, they completely shut golf down. There was no maintenance allowed, and the industry got together to educate and to lobby the government to get that changed. And we saw New Zealand go into a stage when they were able to at least have some maintenance. The update on New Zealand is tomorrow they actually are allowed to open courses and actually have play. But the rules have been so strict in New Zealand, some clubs are opting not to open. It's just very difficult. You can only play with people in your household or your bubble. Things like if the toilets are in the clubhouse, they're still not allowed to open. So it's still going to be restrictive there. But I think in the way that we got together and helped to educate and lobby was good as an industry. I think everything is changing day by day. And as I said, at different times of things, even across Asia, which I won't talk about, Eric and David will do that. But, from one side in Korea where we have courses that are open and free time, compared with India on the other side, which is completely shut down. If we look around in the world, in Europe, UK is shut down, France, Spain, they're in complete lockdown. Austria and Denmark are allowed to open, but with social distancing. And Sweden, as we heard in other aspects, didn't close at all. So again, such a variety. The UK now, it's common that the staffing levels have had to be reduced significantly. Only less than 10% of the clubs that are open actually have any way to get food and beverage to golfers, which that's obviously a difficulty in getting any kind of revenue from a member course. I think, and also with increased cancellation in member rates in the UK as well. I think if you look at the US, the NGF is putting together some really good data. And if we look at that on a weekly basis, they're saying now that 40% of municipal clubs are actually open, compared with 33% only a week ago. And that trend is happening in private courses and daily fee courses also. Huge differences across the states also. In the West Coast, California, we see only about 20% of the courses open. Whereas if you go down to Florida and the Southwest, 75%. And up in the Northwest, around Washington, New Jersey, 5%. So huge different fluctuations in what are happening. You asked for Australia. It's been a bit of a mixed reaction here also. Only the state of Victoria actually dictated closing down golf courses. but the rest of the country is in various states of lockdown. A lot of member clubs with no revenue coming in because of no food and beverage have decided to shut their doors. We did a survey ourselves over the last week or so, and we had a significant number of clubs that came back to us. Interesting, we only had one course that was shut. I worry about that statistic because maybe the ones that were shut didn't answer us. But I think on the other one, it's good to look at because we had 20% were running with their full staff. A lot of the others have had obviously had staff shortages. The other thing is a third of the courses that responded actually are going to be doing some renovation during this time, using this time to upgrade the course, which is always quite positive. Maintenance has been reduced, obviously. A lot of courses choosing to put their staff in shift work as a safety precaution should they get an outbreak. That means the whole staff doesn't get stood down. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. And the other thing we've seen recently is bringing some staff back because they've had to lay them off, but the government support system is kicking in and allowing all forces to bring some people back on board. So that's, again, a good thing to see. Around the world, each country is looking as differently. So you need to really be up to date with what the local governments are actually doing to support industry.
Right. So how is all this affecting the total business from your perspective?
It's interesting. I mean, we've been so busy because our first thing that we have to do is check on the safety of our staff and our customers and how we're visiting staff. We spend a lot of time providing protection to allow the people that do have to interact with the staff, making sure that's all in place, understanding all the regulations, communicating all those regulations. If you look at Toro, we have 350 staff in 5 countries, and everybody working under different rules is a really difficult situation. I'm sure you do within J&J. I think that's been our first thing. It took us a few weeks to make sure that was in place, the safety aspect of it, and then looking at how we can continue to support customers. One of the interesting things around the world is that certain companies have been designated as essential, and most of our facilities, our manufacturing, our distribution centers are still running, albeit differently. Most of our administration is done from home now, and we found new ways of doing things. Toro's business comes from different industries also, the construction industry, the home garden, irrigation that supports agriculture. But of course, most of our revenue comes from golf. That's the most important, and that business has been significantly affected.
All right.
I think it was interesting is that we do a quarterly review with our staff, bearing in mind the last review was in January, and it's really hard to believe. When I look back to start looking at the next month's review, that it was business as normal. You know, in mid-January, we heard of the first fatality, and we were really blind to what was happening. And if you think about it, we've closed our borders, we can't travel within countries, restaurants, cafes, pubs, clubs, working from home, social distancing, isolation, quarantine, wash your hands, don't touch your face, limit gatherings. We didn't know this when I did the last, and yet we've adapted. You know, forums like this and the way we do our daily life has actually changed. And I think golf has adapted kind of in the same way that everybody has. But I think what's happening now is that we're moving on from getting over the daily issues we had to face So what's the longer term? And what's it going to be like when we open?
Right. So before we get to the longer term scenario, maybe we switch a little bit to David and getting closer to Southeast Asia. So David, how do you see the situation in Asia at the moment? Maybe Thailand, Malaysia, more specifically, that's your home markets. But how do you see it?
Well, first of all, Henrik, thanks for putting this together, and Jebsen and Jessen. It's great to be here with Richard and Eric representing the Asia Golf Industry Federation. And what we're trying to do in growing the game and growing the communication network that we have within everybody from as far north as Japan, as far away as India, and all the way down to Australia and New Zealand. I was in Thailand when this started kicking off, and there was an announcement. My family live in Malaysia, and there was an announcement on the 17th of March from the Malaysian government saying that night at midnight they were going to close down all flights coming in. So I took the opportunity to quickly call Malaysian Airlines and jump on a flight to get home to see the family, with the expectation that I might be only down here for 2 weeks. I had my return flight booked to go back to Thailand. And here we are today, I think is 6 weeks now being locked inside the house. And Malaysia has had very strict regulations with this MCO, this mass control order, where they've only allowed one person to leave the house and one person in the vehicle to go and do the shopping, the groceries and things like that. So we never would have expected that I would be here 6 weeks down the road. And the government has announced another 2 weeks through to the 12th of May. But we're seeing now other countries around Southeast Asia now extending their lockdown periods all the way to the end of May at this period of time. So, the challenge we have obviously with the golf industry is that, it's perception. As most people know who are golfers, it's a fabulous sport because you're out in the outdoors, and rarely do we get close to each other as golfers. So we've seen a very different approach being handled across the world. But in Asia, most of the golf courses up in the north of Asia, Japan's, Korea's and China, have continued to play golf. Even though they've had their lockdowns, they've enabled golf to still be played. Whereas here in Southeast Asia, golf was really quickly shut down by most of the governments. I think the last to shut down was probably Singapore, and Eric will more than likely go through a lot more of this information. But Thailand right now is an uncertainty. Currently, the golf courses are closed. They closed around about the 27th of March. And we're expecting that some announcements are going to come out either today or tomorrow from the government as to whether or not some golf courses can open in May. But already we've received announcements that those golf courses in the Bangkok area will remain closed throughout the whole month of May. And as I said, Malaysia is definitely closed till the 12th of May at this point of time, but may go for longer. The challenge, of course, for the industry is that a lot of golf courses prior to this pandemic coming down were struggling. There's not a lot of golf courses that I think could put their hand up and say that they're profitable. Maybe operationally they are, but down at their EBITDA and lower lines, they will probably be running at operating losses and will be requiring funding from outside, from ownership groups or shareholders or the like. So I think, unfortunately, this will probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back, given that we've had this extended lockdown of the golf courses. And my prediction at this point of time is I think that by the end of 2020, we can expect that there's probably going to be a 5 to 10% contraction in the golf market. There's going to be golf courses that are going to be closed. And this is going to continue through 2021 because the markets are going to be very slow to recover. We're going to be looking, each country is going to be relying on its local domestic players for the rest of this year and probably into the first half of next year before we start to see tourism, people getting back on flights again once they start to feel comfortable with travel. Typically, business travel will start first, and then you're going to start to see the tourist market probably fall somewhere in the range of 6 months behind that. If we look back at previous crises and episodes that have happened in the region. So, I think those golf courses, as we know, not one shoe fits all. We've got private clubs, we have semi-private clubs, and we have the public resort daily fee access facilities. I think the private clubs are probably going to rebound quicker because the members have got a lot of pent-up demand that they want to get back out there and play golf. But those courses which rely on tourist golfers interstate from other countries are really going to have a difficult time. And especially as we start to look at the new norms, which is the social distancing laws which have come in. Golf courses that have reopened in markets have been restrictive in what you can do. There's 2 golfers per tee time. Tee times are extended to 10 minutes apart. Only 1 golfer per cart is allowed. So naturally, if this is the way the golf courses are going to be operated until such stage as potentially a vaccine comes out and laws start to be relaxed, inevitably that means that golf courses are already losing between 50 to 60% of their inventory, which is going to be difficult for them to survive. And members clubs are probably going to be restrictive in saying that it's members only at this point of time. You can't bring guests out with you. So it's going to have a really big impact on golf. And one of the concerns which I have for Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole, but particularly Southeast Asia, is how does this bode for the future of the game in terms of one of the things which we attract golfers is the caddy service. And, countries like Thailand, which has got the highest volume of tourist golf market, 600 to 700,000 tourist golfers per year, they love the service that they receive. Now, most of these caddies, which at these clubs, are not salaried workers. They're working on round fees and tips, and they're decimated at this point of time. And whether by the time this is all done and dusted, whether they see golf as being their future, they may look at more stable forms of employment, such as working in industrial parks and manufacturing industries and that, which have been able to continue on. And if that does happen, that's going to have another serious impact on the golf game. So I think, for clubs to survive moving forwards, they're definitely going to have to change the business model. There's going to have to be a lot of cost cutting, naturally, because the revenue streams, the top line is not going to be growing. It's not going to be growing this year. It's not going to be growing next year. It's going to be in contraction for a period of time, and I don't think we're going to start to see that growth come back till 2022 at this stage. But it's an opportunity, and there's always an opportunity there. We've seen prior to the pandemic, the retail industry has struggled. Shopping malls, the more shopping malls you walk into, you see empty shop fronts. And this might be an opportunity for clubs which have got rather large spaces, and they sit within vibrant communities with large populations, to start looking at how do they convert the clubhouses into more community centres, mini shopping malls. They could become dental clinics and doctors' offices and mini marts, and the clubs themselves can start to be the provider of delivery services for shopping needs and things like that, and build the relationship with their communities. So, I think we've got to look at those areas as we move forwards and say, golf is not going to be the same. Those who survive, they may be doing so through coming up with new methods. As I mentioned, I think the private clubs are going to do quite well, but there are going to be other clubs, I think, that might have to start considering amalgamating. I think that, if you have 2 struggling clubs that potentially become one club that can succeed, might be a good time for owners and boards and committees to start considering that moving forwards.
All right, thank you. So before we move to what can be done going forward and what people can prepare for opening, I would like to hear from Eric, how is the situation from your perspective, and especially Singapore. Singapore, you actually had a boom here because people couldn't travel, so they played golf, and unfortunately the government then went out and closed the golf courses, so nobody can play golf now. So how does it look in Singapore and from your perspective in AGIF?
Henrik, thank you. And first of all, I'd like to thank yourself, Jebsen, Richard, and David for coming on. It's great to have participation from our board and our membership, and we're only as strong as our membership. And ironically, one of the results of this particular unfortunate situation, fortunate for us, is we have tremendous interaction with our board and also general members, because we have a little bit more time to reflect, and we have a lot of opportunities to work together. So we're hopeful that we can do more and more of these webinars and information sharing. We'd like to thank you very much for facilitating this. On to Singapore, we had it quite good until early of April. And as you said, golf courses were completely booked. They were, especially as predominantly private member clubs, and with the inability to travel, the weekday golf was full. And what I noticed when I played a little bit of golf at my club was that there was an interesting composition that I hadn't seen, is that unlike what you thought before, that most golfers are very, how you said it, getting up in years. And what I saw in my club, at least, was you saw a tremendous amount of 40 to 50-year-old golfers, which in relative golf terms are quite young. And they're all members. So to me, it sort of gave me an idea that maybe some of the data coming out of Singapore is a little bit skewed toward the older golfer. There is a young crop, and all the golf courses were full. But, things did close down in April, and were closed down for 2 months. So as far as the industry goes here, essentially the lockdown has meant restricted maintenance to a certain extent due to COVID-19 practices. There's also several issues with labor, whether they are based in Malaysia or they're from the service level or China, or whether they were on the construction side and renovation side, whether they were foreign workers. And as you might know, Singapore has undergone a lot of testing within their population of foreign workers. So things are pretty quiet in Singapore, but it's all about preparing to reopen the marketplace here. Now, if I may go to give a regional overview, maybe a graphic overview of Southeast Asia, we had a slide that we've been working together with our members, talking about which courses are open or closed for play. And if we have that up on the screen now, essentially we have a category of open, and as Richard and David alluded to, Australia is open and has been open through the whole time, except for Victoria, with what we would view as the ideal model during this situation, where you have COVID practices on the golf course, you have restricted or closed F&B, but you're still open for play, given the fact that it is in fact a social distancing game. So that is the model that a lot of clubs can take a look at and are in fact of looking at when they do reopen. China is open. They, from what I understand and my contacts in China, they actually had quite a bit of practice through SARS and rehearsal through this particular exercise, and in many respects they're having the same impact. In Singapore, the private member clubs are full because their members don't have any ability to travel so much, and they're staying at home playing golf. Japan is technically still open. You wonder, given the news coming out of Japan at the moment, whether that will change in the next few days. This graph is an ever-changing graph. In fact, given the fluid nature of the way things are moving. Korea has, from what I understand, stayed open the whole period of time, and again is completely full. Korea, most of Southeast Asian golf, I think a lot of people will testify, especially the resort course, is driven by the Korean traveler. So now they're all pent up at home playing golf, and it's a tremendous sort of loss for the Southeast Asian market, but a benefit for the Korean market. So once the gates are open and they're allowed to travel again, I think the Koreans will start traveling again. But right now they're pretty happy at home. Macau is open from all reports. Myanmar is open from all reports, and Taiwan has done a great job of controlling their cases. So they've been open, is from what we understand. By the way, if anybody listening has any corrections, please do contact me directly, and I'll change the graph. It does change every day. So technically under closed, we have countries Bangladesh, Brunei, Hong Kong still being closed with that situation reventing. India is still closed from what we know. Malaysia, as alluded to earlier, Nepal. New Zealand, as mentioned just now, will be reopening tomorrow, so we'll have to change the graph. That is good news and a good scenario. Pakistan, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Thailand all still closed at the moment. With under the title partially closed, maybe we should change that to partially open, depending upon the way you want to view it. Cambodia is on a case-by-case basis. Indonesia is also on I guess it's a governmental, depending upon where you are. And speaking to Peng Xiong at Riverside in Bogor yesterday, he said that the courses are all open there with social distancing, but their numbers are coming up to normal levels. So it seems to be pretty healthy in parts of Indonesia. Papua New Guinea is closed. Philippines has areas which are closed. The large area of Luzon is closed, but certain areas are still in play. And Vietnam is now, it might be today, technically completely open. But we heard that yesterday certain Hanoi courses were closed. Certainly the Da Nang courses are open. So that might change completely to an open status too. And they're implementing a lot of the Australian type of practices where distancing is in effect, F&B is limited, touching the flag stick is limited, all of these other aspects are being controlled, and that's a model for opening. Unclear status, Bhutan, and like a lot of things in North Korea, golf is also unclear. So that's sort of the review of the Asia Pacific region. And we're at the AGIF, we're doing a lot of work through information communication. If you take a look at the website and the information that we're able to put through, there is so much information for the Federation and the Golf Club to the argument of how they might want to reopen their marketplace. You have information from the RNA, effective opening practices, or turfgrass practices. You have a whole host of information. So we've been, when we've been asked to, and sometimes proactively supplying information to the GAs and to the governing bodies on case studies on how the argument for reopening the golf course and the golf course industry. Now, it's quite interesting. Two markets that have the strongest data are Singapore and Hong Kong, because both of those marketplaces did some industry research with the RNA and also GBAS, Australian Research Company. We're actually quantifying the value of the business in both of those markets in terms of how many people are employed, what's the total amount of industry. So they can make a comprehensive argument to the government that the industry is worth this much and employs so many people and charitable dollars through. So this might be a wake-up call for other markets throughout Southeast Asia to start consolidating information on what the value of the industry is to the market so they can have a real strong argument in the future. I know that Thailand has some great data from the Thai Authority of Tourism saying that golf actually brings in the second largest per capita revenue after medical tourism. So I'm sure that that's being part of the argument in Thailand as well.
Right. I think people forget that. I think the people's perception is golf is a rich man's game, right? But they forget how many people actually is employed in the golf industry and how much the golf industry contributes to the local society. And David mentioned before what happens with caddies at the moment. At the moment, a lot of caddies is unemployed or a lack of money. So what is happening going forward? And I think not everyone really think about the total impact of the current crisis, right?
Exactly, and that data should be aggregated. The hotel industry will have done it. Different industries will have done it and made the economic impact. Singapore is quite fortunate amongst Singaporeans because they have a wage scheme which compensates their staff, but then the overseas staff are not necessarily being compensated. Interesting from caddies, some cases, the private clubs in various different places are having caddy funds, especially in the private clubs in the Philippines or Malaysia, where funds are being set up for the caddies. But you're right, in general, the industry is not quantified, and the perception of golf sometimes is a false perception that, okay, we're just hurting a few elite people. So that's something that in the future, possibly the ability to aggregate information would be a good thing. But in general, within this context, there's also an opportunity, and perhaps we can talk about this a little bit later, that you observe the club industry in general, and this is not just a golf club, but any private club, social club, that most of these clubs should have been started as a social club of like-minded individuals, and in general, a safe haven to many of the, or a quiet spot. So golf has a real opportunity, I do think, to reinvent itself as a safe haven during these times, troubled times, and also as a game that is already social distancing, meaning that it is a sport that you can move to, which already has social distancing almost within it. So you can switch from another sport as well within that context. So, we're taking the opportunity to say there is a tremendous opportunity. While, as David said, true, there's going to be some, definitely some hard times for some clubs, but there's a great opportunity for some clubs to reinvent themselves during this time.
All right, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. Countries are opening, and Vietnam hopefully opening soon. So, David, you recently posted an article through the AGIF on things to avoid when you're opening, like the price war trap and so on. Any other thoughts, recommendation for the clubs in the region, what to look at now here preparing for the opening?
Yeah, well, I think as Eric highlighted there, golf is a safe haven. Golf clubs are a safe haven compared to virtually any other sport for that matter. So, I think that's the key thing that clubs need to be doing is making sure that they're going to be, getting ready now and sending out the messages to their members, to their guests, to their databases that, we can't wait to see you again. We've done everything possible within our regulations to ensure that the hygiene and the safety of golfers when you come to the club is going to be well and truly catered for. So I think, right now, that's the key thing is getting those communication platforms out there, making sure that you and your teams at the clubs are really doing everything in your possibility to focus on that. Make sure that you're communicating internally first and foremost. Get all your key frontline staff together and make sure that they're all up to speed and get their contributions and their feedback on what the club can be doing better to ensure that every little touch point that the golfers see when they arrive back at the club gives them that impression of comfort, so that they then go back and start telling their friends, I went to the club, it was great. It's not the old club at this point of time. It will be one day, but for now, the most important thing was that we were able to get back out onto the golf course. So do that communication internally. Start looking at your training. You're going to have to operate your club differently. You're going to have hygiene ambassadors or something like that in your club. They're going to be people who basically patrol. Your head of housekeeping who's going to be making sure that your hand sanitizers are well stocked up and through all your touch points in the club operations. So a lot of work needs to be done in that area moving forwards. But one of the things which I did touch on in the last message which came out from the AGIF was regarding pricing. And what we've seen historically in the past 2 decades in Asia, I've been here now I think for 30 years or 31 years, is that every time there was any sort of a crisis, financial crisis, epidemic, pandemics, clubs were very quickly to go to discounting their prices for golf. And what we've all got to understand is this is not a time to fight with each other. As I said, some clubs will survive, some clubs will thrive, some will survive, some will not. But going into a price war is definitely not the answer. And those who want to take a look at the hotel industry are going to see that every time they came out of crisis and regions, especially destinations, went into price wars, it took them 24 months to recover, to get back to that same ADR, to those same occupancy levels. So if you can, just maintain with your pricing. And then if you want to do anything at the club that gives the customers, the members, the guests a better experience, give away a little bit of things. If you want to give away some food items or things like that, food is not a high profit area of the club operations. So giving away a little bit there doesn't have a huge cost to it, but it enables the customers to have a different feeling about the whole experience. I think that clubs know that they're going to have to cut costs. That's a difficult thing to do. So you're going to have to start looking at your organisation charts. Obviously, the hardest thing to do is to start to operate clubs with lower staffing numbers than you've had in the past. Typically, like hotels will do, the first area to look at is your back of house. If you can make savings there, because in the recovery process that we're going to have going forward, it's all going to be about service. The clubs who service better at the front end are going to do better. What you do at the back end, the processes and the procedures that you had in the past, you may have to be, in many ways, cutting some corners with those. You may be taking a little bit more of a simpler approach to how you were handling things before, from purchasing, HR and finance, to ensure that you're putting all of your workforce more towards the areas which are going to build customer loyalty, build relationships, and keep your revenue flows coming in. So I think that some of the other key things that clubs are going to have to do now more than ever in Southeast Asia is they're going to have to become touchless. A lot of the operation processes that we have here still use somewhat antiquated methods. We're not yet mobile friendly with tea time bookings. Not every golf course uses online booking systems, prepaid booking. As we know, cash is king in any business. So being able to ensure that we get payments up front for our golf bookings, especially if we're having to restrict tee times, is going to be very important. There's a lot of cloud-based systems out there which can help clubs that enable golfers even to do their check-in, do their payments, do their bookings, do their food and beverage ordering all on their own mobile phone. Golfers are going to feel comfortable with that.
Sorry to interrupt you a little bit, David, here. I have a question here coming in here. So, because you mentioned before that actually membership clubs, and it will be restricted to membership clubs, people playing at only members. So actually, if you look at it that way, isn't there opportunity here in enhanced, especially for the membership club, in enhanced golfing? I also read an article from Denmark when they opened. They have a surge in tea time booking. People couldn't, it's like letting cows out on grass. They couldn't get enough tea booking, so they booked the whole thing, and they had to change their rules of tea booking and so on. So do you see different opportunities for membership clubs, maybe even selling more memberships? And what opportunities are there for the more tourist-driven golf courses?
I have read those articles and how they had to make changes to their booking systems. As I said, demand is going to be high when golf courses start to open again throughout Asia. I live in a gated community. I'm able to go within the community to go for a walk in the morning and a walk in the evening. And there's only small areas of grass, but here we've got residents chipping golf balls in the morning, chipping golf balls in the evening. So the demand is going to be definitely there. How golf courses manage these booking systems is going to be critical. As we know, countries like Singapore, most of the golfers have to still go to the club early in the morning to line up to book their tee times. That's not going to work well with the new social distancing rules. So they're going to have to start figuring it out, in terms of how many tee times a member can book, how frequently they can book a tee time, so that they can assure that all members get an equal opportunity and to experience getting back out on the golf course. But as I said, there's going to be opportunities. Whether or not those convert into more people wanting to buy memberships, I think now is the time that you can, by building that customer loyalty and the relationship, and by really focusing on the front of house service standards, by having these ambassadors in all the key areas that you might have overlooked in the past because we were all too busy doing other things. We're not going to be too busy doing other things at least for the next 6 months once we open, except for focusing on the customers. So look at those. Look at the technology that's out there. The technology is not expensive. It's just that a lot of people have been reluctant to do it because it requires a resetting of everybody's mind. There's a lot of training that gets involved. Actually, setting up the systems is very easy, but everybody in the club needs to be trained. And we always face the challenge of everybody gets into their comfort zone and wants to stick with what they're used to.
Right. I have a question actually coming in here from Malaysia. How do you think tourism golf will affect the golf industry in Malaysia?
Well, Malaysia has kind of struggled a little bit in regards to its tourism golf market compared to its neighbours, a lot because of the lack of the caddy service. And in many areas, a lot of the clubs maybe haven't maintained their golf courses to the same standard as the neighbours, and the level of service may not have matched as well. This is a tough time. This is a really difficult time for Malaysia golf courses, I think more so than some of the other markets. As I mentioned earlier, I don't expect that we're going to start to see tourist golfers, except for those maybe coming up from Singapore across the border into Johor in the southern states. I don't think we're going to start to see tourist golfers coming back into Malaysia until at least the first half of 2021, but potentially the second half of 2021.
Right. Okay. Eric, a little bit back to you. So with preparation for now opening here, so what is AGIF doing at the moment to help the members, and is there any links people should go to on the website? Eric, I think you forgot to switch on the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. On the topic of reopening, yes, we've launched a new website. We believe it's much improved. There is a specific section on COVID resources, and there's quite a bit of information on reopening strategy and practices for members that they can use per their want. And of course, we have several WhatsApp groups we're sharing with all the general managers of our membership. We have our board membership group. We have quite a few avenues to open, and we've been assisting our members in finding strategies to reopen. One of our major members is the RNA, and they have published some specific strategies for maintenance during the shutdown, but also have some assistance on how to open as well. But it sort of comes down to our overall ethos, which is the management of the golf course, both on turfcraft and club management. And we view this particular situation, a very serious situation, as sort of a litmus test to the strength of management or the challenges of management. There's a lot of the issues that are being alluded to, like price wars, et cetera, and opening practices, are something that needs to be communicated very systematically to the ownership, to the membership, to the committees, et cetera. And we've been running several levels of education, whether they be with the certificate of greenskeeping, our club management training, which are all built to enhancing the professionals' knowledge within Southeast Asia to be able to develop their skills and their knowledge base to be able to make that argument internally, and also have a resource of peers in which whom they can reference to while trying to make those arguments. So in addition to that, there's a lot of online resources that were being built because we can't run events physically anymore for the duration. We have webinars and podcasts, which we are broadcasting now for members and non-members to take a look at and reference as far as strategy to reopen.
Right. Richard, I know that one of your key topics as the president of AGIF is the CIG, right? So what are we doing on that front? We have done a lot of training the past year in person with people in seminar rooms. So what is your thoughts on going forward on this? I know it's deep in your heart, so maybe...
Yep, you're right, Henrik. And for this, I'm going to be speaking with my AGIF hat, not my Toro hat, as before. But I think that we always wanted, AGIF has really always stood for one of the main things is education. And we got started, for those of you that don't know, we got started at the end of 2018, and we developed a curriculum together with the New Zealand Sports Turf Institute. And we started off last year. We've had 4 sessions on the go in Thailand and Malaysia. We've actually had participants from India, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, obviously, and it's been pretty successful. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to have an accredited but affordable education program. And so for what is a really low fee compared with other education, you get a full year's training, 3 solid weeks with instructors on the golf course. You get monthly updates, and we've taken an approach where it's practical tests. So on your golf course, you actually have to interact with the instructor and do things on your course. Now, of course, that proves a little bit difficult in today's situation. But we think that we can adapt and to do some online processes once the courses are open. The difficulty is when you have a complete shutdown where you're not able to access the course. But once they open up and some of the staff get back, we think we can continue some of the training online. And we also are planning to do some more in-country training as well along the same lines. I would like to say that it's a year-long course, and a certificate is given at the end of it from the AGIF, but also with the RNA. And I'd like to really thank the RNA, who without their support, this would have been very difficult to do. They have supported for 3 years to allow us to really establish it. The other thing is that, as I mentioned about companies needing to be part of, kind of involved in the industry, being part of the AGIF allows companies such as ourselves, with my other hat on, such as to be involved and actually in an industry that we get our revenue from actually put back. And I'd like to thank the companies that did support this in a financial way, which was Jebsen Jessen, John Deere, Jacobson, Syngenta, and Toro, that supported the RNA in getting this going. So I think that moving forward, this is going to be one of the key things that we can build on the AGIF. We will, in the next probably 12 months, be working on a slightly different model, but we can believe once students are back on their courses, we'll be able to do that practical model. One of the key things that I think is successful with it is that we use a mentor system. So the superintendent on the course also get their workbooks. They're also part of this. And that links the student with their superintendent to be part of that education process. And I think the people that have been through it so far, that's part of the success for it. So that's one of the things that we're going to be really pushing. On top of what Eric said, is that some of our normal functions we cannot run. And so we'll be looking more and more online to support the industry that way.
Right. So until we are there, I think also Eric sent out a mail, and we can say it here also that any members or any organization who want to share knowledge online is welcome to send to the AGIF office, and it will be reposted on the AGIF website. So you can always go there to get more information. I think we are coming to an end here and need to round off. So let's take a short round here, if any closing comments. So let's start with you, David, with anything here on the final note.
Look, it's been great to be able to sit with all of you and have a chat today. As we all know, this is a very difficult situation for not just the golf industry, but the world as a whole. We need to understand that we're all in it together, And this is the time that we have to reach out. We have to communicate better with our fellow golf industry experts in all fields to ask for advice. And tell them what you're doing, and seek out advice for other ways of doing things. Don't cocoon yourself. Don't trap yourself in the space where you think that you have to make all the decisions, and you have to do that for your boards and your committees and your owners. Be open and as I said, talk to your neighbours, your fellow bosses, and hopefully everybody comes out of this on the right side.
Okay. Eric, anything from, so last closing comments, anything you want to highlight out there to audience members, whatever?
Well, thank you. Thanks once again, Henrik, Richard, David. I think as David said, this is unprecedented time, but it's also an opportunity. And in Asia, there has been a little bit of a reticence to share information. That's the observation that we have both in the club industry and the turf industry. And as David has said, this is the perfect opportunity to share information, to learn from each other, share other things. It is the ideal time to do so. And the AGIF, whether you're a member or not, we are here to facilitate that and be able to assist you in any way. So I'll close with that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Eric. So since we are in unprecedented time, maybe we round off with the President's final words, except asking for more members to join AGIF, support the industry. So Richard, final comment from you?
Well, I think David said it when, we're in an amazing time, and I think the industry will be different when it comes out of it. We've got to kind of look at ways that we can learn from what's happening. I liked, listening to what David was saying about clubs. We need to share that. The AGIF is a great way to do that. This kind of format, I didn't believe that I'd spend half my time on video screens just a few weeks that we are now. But I think it's a great way to share things. Somebody said something interesting earlier is that we've had a lot more interaction with AGIF in the last month or so, because some people do have some extra time. And I'd encourage people that are sitting and maybe have things to offer for the industry, use the AGIF as a format to kind of help us communicate with people. And that's kind of the big story going ahead. So thank you, Henrik and Jebsen Jessen, for putting this together.
Okay, thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you for today, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.